And I'm actually going to transition us straight into our next program, which is actually, I think, a perfect follow-up to this one. The next program is focused on fashion, and we have been noticing a bit recently that a number of our new members who are coming to WARP, especially young members, are interested in fashion, like several of the scholarship recipients shared with us today, and particularly in topics like slow fashion, sustainable design, material culture. And so we have a wonderful panel discussion to finish our public part of today's program. And so I'm going to introduce the panel and introduce our two speakers. So the program is called Inspired Fashion Design, Innovation Meets Tradition. And this panel is focused on the fashion industry. The fashion industry globally is the fourth largest sector in textile production, with a huge impact on the environment and society. More and more consumers and designers are embracing a slow fashion approach, which takes into consideration all aspects of the supply chain, and in doing so, aims to respect people and the environment. For this panel, we welcome two fashion designers who have developed a mindful, sustainable practice in their work. Lola Faturoti and Bianca Kuttickattu both draw inspiration from the textile traditions of their cultural heritages and will share their ideologies about fashion design, sustainable practice, and design innovation. And Bianca is going to be sharing about her work with us first, so I'll introduce. Bianca is a British Canadian designer of Indian descent. Born in England to artist parents, Bianca's childhood inspired a creative practice founded on a reverence for the natural world and the joy of making things by hand. She has worked for a number of notable designers, and in 2020, she started her brand, Nami, a zero-waste, slow fashion brand using repurposed textiles. So Bianca, we welcome you to the WARP community, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I was so glad to catch the end of the last presentation because I already feel renewed and inspired. I'm so excited to become a member and get to know you more, and I'm really grateful to Lola Faturoti for introducing me to you. So I'm going to talk about my very new brand, Namai, and first, I'm going to start out by saying a little bit about my upbringing, my education, and my career, because I feel like that has kind of shaped the way that I see sustainable fashion and the things that are important to me in an ethical and sustainable way of doing a clothing business, and also my heritage. So I was born to a South Indian father and a German British mother in England. And my parents split up when I was really young, so I didn't grow up with any exposure to Indian culture. And I only met my father and went to India when I was 30. So that's been kind of a big part of my life, this sense of like identity that I didn't know anything about. I grew up in the countryside in England and then in Canada. And my family, like growing up, didn't have a lot of money. So buying secondhand clothes for me was just what I did. And it was something that I loved a long time before vintage clothing was fashionable or even really existed. So repurposing clothing, and I would make quilts out of old clothes and customize things. And that was something that I loved. And when I started, I moved back to London and studied fashion. And repurposing clothing became like an integral way that I designed, and I would buy clothing and cut it up and reshape it and try it on my body and use it as a tool for design. And then after I graduated, I worked in the industry for a few years and then went to Paris and did a master's. And there I continued to work in this way. And actually visiting the secondhand shops was the beginning of my design process. And it was the way that I got inspiration because I just loved the history behind the clothes and this idea that I was kind of working with something that already existed. After I did my master's, I was lucky enough to do an internship in Brazil at this NGO that works with women in the favelas. So I worked with this sewing cooperative of women who lived in the favelas, and they did handcrafts and embroidery and made things. And we developed a collection with them to teach them some pattern cutting and collection building skills, and also to draw press and attention to the work that they were doing within their cooperative. And that culminated in a fashion show in the favelas that was really fun. And I loved getting to know their techniques and incorporated those into my design work. And after this internship, I then did another internship at this brand called Martin Margiela. That's a French brand, and they do a couture collection that back then, it's been going since the 90s. And when I did my internship in 2007, it was not called sustainable fashion. It's just a luxury fashion brand. But they did this couture collection using all like recycled materials. So while I had the privilege to be in this like couture workshop with couturier women who had trained for many years in like the fine sewing techniques of couture, they made pieces using recycled clothing. So they would make like a couture jacket out of old denim, and I made a fitted black dress using sequins made out of cutout from records, vinyl records. And I made another top that was knitted out of recycled silk, red silk sleeves. So those experiences like were really fundamental in what was important to me and what I loved about fashion. And after that internship, I was lucky enough to get a job at Celine, and it was right when they were rebranding in 2008, and I became a shoe designer. So that kicked off nearly 15 years of my career in shoe design. And I've been working as a shoe designer for Celine and then Acne Studios in Sweden. I moved to New York in 2012 and worked as a shoe designer for Rag & Bone, and then was the design director at Via Spiga, Diane von Furstenberg, and then 4 years as a design director at Vince doing their shoes. And needless to say, like after 6 years in the corporate fashion industry, it was a positive way for me to develop some strong opinions on what sustainable fashion is to me, because the way that I was working within that company was just so against all of my values, and the waste that I witnessed was unbelievable. We spent $60,000 a year just buying designer shoes to copy to send to China. We would probably spend like $60,000 a season just buying leathers in order to make the sample collection. Half of those leathers were never used. And even when I did try and implement sustainable practices into my work, like using some algae and rubber soles, I just felt like it was a drop in the ocean, because I was making products that weren't recyclable, that were just going to end up in a landfill. And it just started to feel really hopeless. And aside from the waste, the whole system just generated around this idea of generating need and desire for things that no one really needed any more of. And every season we were just making more of the same types of products that we'd already made the season before. And I just honestly started to feel like, what's the point in designing new things? And all these sustainable brands started to pop up using, 5% of natural rubber in the shoe, which was still, going to end up in a landfill and sit there for hundreds of years. And I started to feel like the most sustainable thing that I could do and anyone could do would be to not start a sustainable fashion brand, because I just didn't think the world needed any more brands or product at all. So that led me to a pretty depressing place, obviously, as a designer, not feeling like I even knew what the purpose was to what I was doing. And I was lucky enough to be laid off during the pandemic and finally have some time to refresh my burnout and get this sense of perspective. And during that time, it took me back to the things that I loved. And one of the things that I'd grown to love was kantha quilts. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with kantha quilts, but I discovered them on Etsy and I was blown away with them and started buying them for my home and as gifts for friends many years ago. And kantha quilts are basically made out of recycled silk, or I work with cotton ones, cotton saris made from a very fine muslin. And primarily in Bangladesh, where the cotton muslin is woven to a very fine standard, the saris are super light. So they women take 5 or 6 layers of saris and stitch them by hand into kantha quilts. And over years of use, they develop a beautiful patina and the colors are amazing. And the prints on the original saris and then they're often over dyed and over printed. So I reached out to the person who I'd been buying these kantha quilts from on Etsy and just said, like, I've always dreamt of making some clothes out of these quilts. So I started working with him and he had a tailor and we started producing these clothes together. And I wasn't consciously creating a brand or setting out to do something specific, but I just was following my gut instinct and my love for the colors. And it was a way for me to connect with India, because growing up and having never been to India, I just had this vision of what India would look like. And that vision was just colors and saris and fabrics flowing and combinations of colors. So color has always been really important to me and important to my sense of identity. And the kantha quilt clothing just took on a life of its own, and people really responded to it, which gave me the confidence to start new designs and to refine the designs that I had. And I started selling them at markets and then launched my website. And now I've been selling on my website since January, and I'm still doing a lot of markets to meet people and learn about what people think and introduce the brand to people. So I want to share some pictures of the jackets that I do, and then talk about the kantha quilts and what I'm drawn to in the quilts, and show you some of the details and the things that I look for in the quilts. So this is the jacket shape that I usually wear, make. And this is one of the techniques that I'm drawn to with the kantha quilts, is the very like vintage and antique jackets. And this is a beautiful example because this quilt was made out of many small scraps of fabric, not large saris. And people gathered scraps over years to sew them together and to make into these beautiful quilts. And you can see the white stitch that's kind of unifying all of these beautiful colors that are combined together. And then on the inside, it has like a very beautiful and worn patina. So I like this piece particularly because it shows, the patchwork nature of the quilts and how they're being used to make something beautiful out of scraps that wouldn't have been used. And here are some other examples of that, where it's like the fading allows you to see the layers of saris underneath, and the stitching is holding those faded layers together. Another thing that I really love and look for is this kind of the fading, the dégradé, I call it, where the colors fade from one color to the next, or from white into a color. And because I'm approaching this kind of from the perspective of someone who's worked in fashion for a long time and doesn't want that anymore, but visually, I like the link between kind of the modern perspective, or, not modern in the sense of modern like new, but just like a simple design, modernism, modern art, design and simplicity. Coming from my fashion background, and linking that with the artisanal nature and the handcrafted qualities of this work. And here's another example of like where I love how the colors fade from one to the next in such a like gradual and beautiful way. And this is an example of a kantha quilt that's been tie-dyed over top of the existing kantha. And this has been tie-dyed in a way, I don't know the name of it, but it's where there's a wooden block and the fabric's folded around the block and then dyed around the edges. So you have this interesting geometric square design. And then other quilts that have this like really simple and classic circular technique. And then another thing that I really treasure and love is that the bold blocks of color that I find on quilts. And this one has these beautiful patches in bright colors where holes have been repaired, and then the bold color that was on the original sari as well. And then here's some jackets photographed on Friends, and this is in my apartment. And this jacket is a great example of a kantha that has this diamond embroidery over top of the actual kantha quilt. And this is a kind of a more special quilt that would have been a wedding present or a token of love or given at the birth of a baby. And one thing I've learned is that kantha quilts were made as gifts. You never made a kantha quilt for yourself. You would always pass it on to someone else. And I think that's just another one of the beautiful elements of these quilts, because they're made by women for comfort and warmth and protection and an expression of love. Here's another photo of my friend. I'm wearing the jacket in nature. And thank you for your time. I'd love to hear from you. We're going to answer questions afterwards, but please email me if you have any comments or questions. My website's here. My Instagram is also namai_studio. I just forgot to put it on here. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful to be here.
Thank you, Bianca. That was absolutely wonderful. The designs are breathtaking. I'm going to introduce Lola, and in the meantime, if anyone has questions for Bianca to answer at the end, you can go ahead and start to put them into the chat. So I'll go ahead and introduce Lola, but we'll also be watching the chat for the end. So let me pull back my introduction script. So, okay. Lola Faturoti is a WARP member who many of you know and love. Lola was born in Nigeria, attended fashion school in London, and arrived in New York in the early 90s. After developing a successful career in the fashion industry, Lola became concerned about damage the industry has done to the environment and to traditional societies. That is what inspired her to create Lola Loves Cargo, a sustainable brand that celebrates tradition, joy, and responsible manufacturing. Lola's newest brand, Lola Faturoti Loves, is an ecologically sustainable fashion line committed to sustainability and social justice. So Lola, welcome to you.
Hi, am I on?
You are. Wonderful to see you.
Wonderful to see you too. Thank you so much for inviting me, and hello to all the ladies that I love, and I've met most of them. Yes, my name is Lola Faturoti for the people that do not know. First of all, I would like to say bravo to Bianca. You know, you did a great presentation, and so I would say something about myself. First of all, I think what I do, my design, is a complete direct link to who I am as a person. So I think starting from who I am as a person, which is molded by my background, will be the best way to start. I was not born into tradition, but I was raised in tradition, which means I was born in London. At the age of 3, I was sent home to my grandmother. I hated it so much for the longest time in my life, but it's the best thing that could ever happen to me, the tradition. And I was raised by my grandmother, who was, I would say now you would call her a fashion designer, but in a very traditional way. I mean, in my hometown in Ondo in the 60s. And she was very innovative, the way she was creating, you know, molding a design with a traditional clothing. There were different type of fabrics that are very, very authentic, you know, they're called ashoke, but not the ones they're doing these days, the older one. And she would, there are different types, which I will show you guys later, which are the blue, which are called adire, and the red one, which are called Sonia. And she's very good at taking up the panels and joining these two wave of fabrics together, which no one was doing back then in the 60s in her hometown. But anyway, that was my background, and also watching her working with, like, you know, these women that are working for her. And also me, you know, at my young age, I had to sit down there, you know, I was the one taking out the panels, you know, so I wasn't playing much with my friends, which was maybe not the wisest thing, you know, maybe she should have let me find the balance, because now I walk like a dog, because that's all I know. But so that was my background. And leaving Nigeria, you know, and going back to London, actually, I should talk more about Nigeria. Every year, we only get 2 clothes, you know, apart from what we have. But during Christmas, they give you get a new dress, a new outfit. Or Christmas, and then New Year, you get a bigger outfit, which is more like a more fancier one. And those are the 2 main times in which you get something new. So you're used to not wasting, you know, we wear whatever we have. And at the end of the year, we really look forward to getting something new. So that is one of the things that instilled, you know, not wasting into my system. And apart from the tradition of the way I was being raised, of seeing what goes on with these women, the clothing, the mannerism, the religion, you know, when I say the religion, it's like like the Orishas, you know, which back home, you know, you're both Christian, you know, because you have to kind of like do the Christian from the colonialism, you know, but then you have your own gods, you know, which is more like the African gods, and the background, which you kind of like, you know, practice both. And my grandmother was very into both. And she was a very strong woman. And she instilled so much into me. You know, I remember she would say to me, when she's cooking, she will make me stay with her. She says to me, you cannot find a husband if you don't know how to cook, because food is the way to a husband's heart, to a man's heart, which I think is complete bullshit now, you know, but back then I completely believed it. So I'm a very good cook, but I don't have a husband, so go figure. But so at the age of 17, I moved back to London, and at London, I studied fashion design, you know, till when I was 20 at London College of Fashion. And then I started coming to New York. In the 90s, I moved to New York. And I was working at this store. It's like the best store to me in New York back in those days, because I mean, Diana Ross was my customer, Elton John was my customer. Everyone came in, JFK Jr. was my customer. I mean, just mention it, they were all there. We were selling all designers. They brought all these innovative designers from Europe. You know, they were the one that launched them here in New York. And that also brought me, because I didn't know that Bianca worked for Margiela. I was the first one to wear Margiela in New York City. When they brought Margiela through the store into Charivari, I remember seeing the collection, and that was the first collection in which it collected. It went to it got all this old costume things from the library that he made into like this beautiful jacket, you know, with all the embroidery. They stunk. I mean, they were in the store and they stunk because they're so old, but they're so beautiful at the same time. And I remember, because we're so used to like the tradition, you know, very couture kind of like clothes, and to kind of like see this innovative ways in which using like recycled clothing, but in a very interesting way that no one has seen. And I think that opened my creativity, because I wasn't sure, even studied fashion in London and coming to New York, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, you know. So working in the store was kind of like a cool way, but seeing like this designer, and actually they call them the Antwerp 8 or 7, they were like these 7 designers that studied at this certain school in Antwerp. And one of them is Margiela, then you have Andrew Milmeister, you have Emot Lang, you know, I don't know, people in fashion, I'm sure Bianca knows who I'm talking about, Dick Buckenberg or whatever, but there were like 8 of them. So we were selling like 4 of those designers. Dries Van Noten, I'm not sure if he's part of them. So anyway, Margiela really touched me so much. I mean, I was wearing Margiela clothes from head to toe, and I was kind of like the muse for Margiela in Charivari, to the point that when he came to New York to the store, I was the one that they called to come and represent, you know, because I was like the Miss Margiela. And but what he does for me was that he made me, because the way it kind of like design, it makes you think that, wow, I could design my own way, because everything was kind of like genius, but at the same time simple. So instead of you like stitching like all the same, you're not stitching the same, you're just putting the same together and just doing one row of seam, and then you create like a wonderful outfit. So that really inspired me, and I started my own collection, which I was wearing with Margiela. So every time a customer would come, you know, my customer, they'll be like, oh, wow, I like your skirt. And I'm like, oh, well, we don't have the skirt because I designed the skirt. So in the end, the word got to the vice president, to the president of the store, and I went to talk to her that, you know, is it possible for me to create like a small collection and put this collection in the store? And she said yes. So I was actually selling my collection with my collection with my idols, you know. Anyway, that's the way I was brought up. I was made as a designer in 93, and everything was just like completely like, I mean, I was like overnight success, which I wasn't completely ready for. So I went through like different stages without having to bore you guys, but I did like every set of fashion, which means I started with deconstruction, which is what Margiela taught me. Then couple of years I stopped and I went into couture. And after going to couture, I did wedding, bridal. And after doing bridal, then I went to heavy couture, which I did because it was 1999 and we're ending that millennium. And I felt like I have a message to say to the world. And my message is still part of the grounding part of me, which means in order for us to go forward, because already you could see the technology, the, you know, coming up in the late 90s. And at this point, I was thinking that in order for us to stay balanced, we have to go back to the earth. We have to go back to where we stay grounded in order to stay balanced in this period that we're going into, which is all like technology and everyone like fine. I mean, it's not even the way we are these days. So I created this very strong 9 couture collection, which New York Times, you know, I was written up in New York Times. I was in the cover of Women's Wear Daily. I was in like basically every magazine, like completely talking about it. And in 2001, I decided after September 11 that I wanted to do something different. Actually, the clothing that I designed then is in the Metropolitan Museum Costume Institute, because New York Times selected 18 designers from all over the world, and that they feel represent the millennium, the end of the millennium. And these are like 9 designers from America and 9 designers from Europe. I mean, just mention all the big designers, you know, in America, it's like Donna Karan, Ralph Lauren, Oscar de la Renta, I mean, all those kind of like design, and then Lola Faturoti, you know. So, and then we were asked to donate this designs to the Costume Institute so that it goes down in history. So I have Martin in the Costume Institute of Metropolitan Museum. So anyway, going forward in 2001, after September 11, I felt like I need a break. So I moved to Milan, and in Milan taught me to be commercial with my designs. So living in Milan for 3 years, coming back to New York, I started my commercial line, you know, which is, it wasn't really commercial, but I guess people could wear it more than what I was doing before. And this collection I was selling to like all the big stores all over the world. It was very, very successful, but still very expensive, you know, like I cannot afford to buy my own clothes. And I think through there, after designing that for 6-7 years, something started brewing inside of me. 2 things. I cannot afford to buy my own clothes. Secondly, I want to create clothes, or I create clothes to make people happy, to bring joy to people. But what I'm doing right now, I'm only selling to like rich people. I'm not spreading the joy that I want to be spreading. So that's number 1. Number 2, although I was producing everything in New York and everything was made ethically, you know, but it still wasn't enough for me. I wanted to dive more into my tradition, you know, into my culture, and to bring that, to make it more apparent, even though if you see that it's more apparent. But I wanted it to be more of a sportswear, which more people would be able to wear. So, but in the deviation of that time, I went to Lola Loves Cargo, which is merging my tradition with cargo pants. But not only merging my tradition, the plan is, you know, to go to different traditional, to different artisans from all over the world, especially from the villages, you know, and work with them, which is the thing that my grandmother imprinted in me, what I see as a young person. I want to walk like that. You know, I want to go to different parts of the world, like different projects with different artisans from different parts of the world. But it needs to be more of the real village people for it to be. But merging their tradition, which is what we're about today, innovation and tradition, merging their tradition in an innovative way, which is me, you know, a traditional woman that have basically journeyed through the world, you know, so I'm kind of like at that point. And then I started Lola Loves Cargo, which all the ladies know because I brought it to our last meeting. And by the way, the meeting that I came to was very, 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 it created a very strong impact on me, especially the first night when we met. You know, I came late, and walking into the room, into the big hall in Washington, I just seen a circle with like all these amazing women. It brought me back to my grandmothers. It brought me back to my roots. It brought me back to the nurturing. It brought me back to the love, you know, and it was a very strong impact on me. And I had such a great time that weekend, and everyone was so loving. So fast forward, so I started Lola Loves Cargo. And then to 2020, I was supposed to start the next project. I was talking to Susan Davis. We were kind of like cooking up something to start the next project. And then obviously it got canceled because of COVID. But the miracle that happened at that time was that towards the middle of that year, there's this amazing company that they print, but they print through the cloud, in technology, but through the cloud, and which allows them to use 40% less ink and 40% less water, so there's no wastage. And then their mode is they're made on demand. So that means we don't have any wastage. When you buy, is when they produce the things for you. So when I was lucky enough to be invited to be one of the designers on that platform, it was just like, wow. Wow, because, okay, Lola Loves Cargo, Lola Faturoti Loves, is all about eco-friendly, making the earth less polluted, but also about limiting the excess that is being sent to landfill, all over the world. We don't really feel it so much here. And so it was a perfect opportunity for me. So I don't know the time that is going. I don't know how much time I have. So
we have about 20 minutes total, and I would like for us to save a little time for questions. Lola, could we show your website so that you can talk a little bit about the designs and the influence of the...
Yes, can I just, are you showing my website, or can I just show my presentation?
We can screen share the slides. We might have to go through them a little bit quickly to leave time for questions, but would you like me to? I
just want to show the picture of this so that they'll just put a face to what I'm talking about.
Sure, absolutely.
Which is this is my grandmother. Okay, can you roll it to the next one?
Let's see. I'm going to go into full screen. Let's see.
It's already full screen, and I'm trying because.
Okay. Here we go. Okay, I'll progress for you. Here we are.
Okay, so this is the grandmother. This is my roots. This is the woman that raised me. This is the woman that instilled everything that I am today inside of me. So I just need you to see her and see how strong she is. So she was the designer. So now we could go to the next one. So this is the traditional attire that I was raised with. This is my mother on the, wearing a complete traditional outfit. And on the other side explains, the different parts is all written down. So we could go to the next one. I'm just going very fast, so I'm not talking so much. So talking about the ashoke. So there are different parts of type of traditional textiles that we have in Nigeria. One is the lace. The lace is actually not very traditional, but they wear it. It came from Europe, during the what's it called, with the colonization. It came, the Dutch. And then we have the attire. The attire is the block printing, the tie-dye. We have the ashoke. The ashoke is what I was brought up with. It's the more authentic ones. And then we have the what's it called? The wax one, which is what is more contemporary now. So that's the one at the bottom. So next page, please. Okay, so this is just me when at my father's chieftain's ceremony in Nigeria, and that is me in the front in a full traditional outfit, the ashoke. This is what my grandmother does. You see how the mixture of the two, the red and then the print, that's my grandmother. That's what she does. And then the lace, with it, and then the coral beads. So next one, and these are my sisters and my cousin. So we go to the next one. Now, these are the real traditional outfit. This is the alari. These are like, you can't even find them anymore. I'm lucky enough to be able to inherit some from my grandmother, and some were passed down to me from my mother, because they give it to every first daughter on my mother's side, and I'm the first daughter. So this is alari. Alari is the red one. Sonia, and can we go back down? I need to see the name of this. Is there It's somewhere there.
Let's see. Here it says it's spelled ETU.
Yeah, Etu. The blue one is Etu, and the white one is Sanya, and the red one is Alari. Okay, next one. Okay, this was my dad when during his chieftaincy. Unfortunately, it's on the other side. But this is Lola Loves Cargo. I want you to see what it's wearing and how it's being made into an innovative contemporary way. So this is actually embroidered, it's taken from there. And the embroidery at the bottom of the pants, which you can see, is what is there. So it's what is added on to the textile set, but in a very modern way that everyone here, in the modern world could be able to wear it. And this t-shirt is actually printed, which is the same one I have on. This is printed with the embroidered. Normally it's all like heavily embroidered, but it's printed. But this one here is embroidered. The rest are embroidered. Okay. Okay, so this is just explaining more about the attires and the different type of attires and different kind of coloring and everything. So we could go up. Okay, so now the attire, how I put that into a innovative way into my work, which you could see from the Oniko, and you could see it on this beautiful top, which actually I mixed two fabrics together, two different fabrics of two different colors, and then I tie-dye the Oniko on top, and that is what creates this different prints. And you could also see, like on this recycled t-shirt, like everything I use are recycled fabrics. And this recycled t-shirts, which is also kind of like, using the creative tie-dye to it. Okay, next one. I'm going very fast, so I'm very nervous. And these are, the Ankara, which is the wax fabric. So they're all like the different types of Ankara, which also are very inspirational to me because I like very much the crudeness of the prints. Sometimes they tell a story, and the way they kind of like do the graphics are very, very interesting. I find them really interesting, and it's very prominent in my work. Okay, so the next one. Okay, so now you could see how the Ankara, how I use them. These are like silk fabric, the chiffon, how I kind of like place them into my work to modernize them. Okay, so next one. Yes, and commemorative fabric is also a very important fabric, it's in my culture. I remember the first time I saw commemorative fabric was when my father's mother passed. This was in the 70s, and they create, with her face on it and the date she was born and whatever they want to do, and everyone was wearing it, in all the different ways. So when we had the first Black president ever in United States, I figured out that it deserves a commemorative fabric. So I designed this. This is silk, and this is, they're both silk, but this is chiffon, which is like a chiffon shift. And then you have like the dress, but on it, it says, God bless, in my language, God bless President Barack Obama. But at the same time, the God bless is still a mix of my British, because you say God bless the Queen, So in my language, I turned it into my language for ex-President Barack Obama. So God bless President Barack Obama. Okay, next one. Okay, now here comes, welcome to Lola Faturoti Loves. So these are the prints, my new project with all the prints, which I started 2 years ago. We only use for this brand organic or biodegradable material. So all this fabric that you're seeing, they're either made out of bamboo, organic cotton, or biodegradable Ecovero viscose. And the colors, they're very, very bright. And that's because they use the cloud, they use less water and less ink in a technology way. So it makes it like more condensed. And they use the best eco-friendly ink that is out there. It's not completely eco-friendly, but it's the best eco-friendly ink that is out there. So next page. And then you could also see how my culture is still intertwined into my design, even though it's in a very contemporary way. Okay, next picture. Okay, so that is me, and that is my website, my 2 websites, my number, and all that, and me dancing for you. So now we have a quick look at my website so that I could explain my current drop and what inspired me for that. Okay, so this is my website, Lola Faturoti Loves. Thank you for coming up. And this the latest print that I have. If you see, it's like the funnel and the wave. The funnel, for me, I see the funnel, or what it symbolizes to me. Funnel, you have the top part of it, and then you have the smaller part that goes in. The upper part of it, to me, is the spiritual world, is the upper world, which is like the big, vast world. And coming through the funnel, coming down into our physical world, which is, the earthly world. And so it's basically the way the spirit, we're taking in the message of the spirit, and the way we're containing it within ourselves, because it's contained when it's going through. So that's what inspired this print. And we could go up a little bit. Okay, up a little bit. And for the first time, I create my first sandals. And the sandals is produced in India, and the leather that they use is recycled goat leather. And the bottom part and the sole is actually vegan, so it's still sustainable in a way. It's made in a very small shoe company over there, and it's all handmade. So this is the new launch, which I did last week, of my new sandals. So we come up a little bit, and I just want to show them the rest of my drop. And this is the pride drop. We won't talk about that. I just go up just to show them my new up. This is about my brand. So, okay, so this is the new arrival. So these are the new shapes that comes into it. I do a lot of kaftans. Kaftan is also another thing that is very traditional, that is very that is also part of my culture, because we wear like this big boo-boo, which is a common thing in Africa, and I modernize my own to make it more contemporary, so that it is more attainable to more people in the Western world. And then I have the slip dress, and I do a lot of scarves. I enjoy very much doing scarves. And this scarf is very important to me. With what is going on out there, I figure out that I need to send some love, which is what my reason for designing is all about. I design to spread love. I design to spread light. I design for people who wear my clothes to feel my energy, to feel my light, so that when they wear my clothes, they're able to spread this joy and this light to the people that observe them on the street. They might not even know, but hopefully through the subliminal message while I'm designing, goes through, and they're able to feel it. And I've gotten a lot of comments and feedback from customers who tells me it's true. So the power of subliminal is very, very important and very important. And I guess maybe it's also the spirituality that was instilled with me by my grandmother. So we go back. I think it's almost done. So can you switch this? No.
Okay.
So this, can you turn that? Oh, okay, that's it. It's okay.
Oh,
so
did you want to share?
Okay, we don't have any more time. So thank you so much. I'm done. I hope I do not overtalk, but I try to like fit in everything in there.
No, that was wonderful, Lola. Thank you so much. And we have 10 minutes left to have some questions in the conversation. No, please don't apologize. That was wonderful. So the first question that came in for Bianca was, where do you source the Kanta quilts to be transformed into the jackets? I know you mentioned originally that was on Etsy. Has that developed for you, Bianca?
Well, since I started the project during the pandemic, I still haven't been to India to meet my tailors face to face. So the tailors that I work with just send me like hundreds of photos on WhatsApp, and then I select the quilts, just visually seeing the photos. But in the next few months, I hope to go to India and like personally go and select the quilts. And eventually I'd like to go to the source to Bangladesh and Bengal, where they're from, and like really delve into that deeper.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bianca. Let's see. I think this is for Lola. It says, this might be an odd question, but would it be considered cultural appropriation for someone who is not Nigerian to wear these clothes you are showing?
Oh, I get that question a lot. I do not design for my culture. I design for the world. And I feel like when you buy something, you have to own it. Do you understand? You wear it, you do not let anything alter your mind, you own it, and people would embrace you from the energy that you're bringing out from the clothes. I mean, I wear clothes from all over the world. I wear saris, the most colorful sari. I was in India, I was wearing the most colorful sari. Anywhere that I go to, I actually adapt to the traditional clothes in wherever I go to, because I love it. And I don't feel anyhow, I don't feel any cultural appropriation. I just feel like I'm wearing something that I love. So in answering to the question, I think there's nothing so-called, especially nowadays. How do you say it again? In appropriation, how do you say it again? Cultural inappropriation?
Cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that. You know, I think I design beautiful clothes and I have no one in mind except for beautiful people.
Wonderful. Bianca, do you have anything that you would add to that kind of thought?
I've given a lot of thought to cultural appropriation, but I guess I feel the same as Lola. The motivation for what I do is to empower people to express who they are through the clothing that they wear. And people tell me that when they wear the jackets, they feel creative and they feel protected and they wear them every day. And like Lola, I would say, I don't want to disregard cultural appropriation, because there's some very real situations where it really affects people and people's work is stolen by the fashion industry. But I also think that like without exploring other cultures, we wouldn't have probably the clothes that we even wear on a daily basis. So there's something about the exchange of cultures and the combining of cultures that creates new things. So, you know, I think that like I'm half Indian, so that allows me to say I'm not culturally appropriating the Kanta quilts, but I've grown up in the West and I see many other people, you know, making clothing. I do a lot of markets, so I people making clothing out of mud cloth and Kanta quilts and American quilts. And I just think it's all good. And the resurgence of interest in handcrafts is good. And, you know, Lola's designs make me feel happy. And that's the main thing. I wear a lot of her clothes, so.
Wonderful. Okay, there are a couple of questions from Ola, who is one of our scholarship recipients who presented right before you. So I'm going to read Ola's questions. She says, this is mind-blowing and very much relatable. The first question for Lola: have you tried other techniques apart from embroidery in translating the agbada design on a regular top?
Yes, the printing. Remember, I showed you the printing, and even what I'm wearing, I don't know, because what this is printing onto the t-shirt, you know, like I want to do t-shirts so that everyone will be able to wear it, you know. And the best way sometimes is to print, especially if you want the price to be price friendly, because it's not, you know, the embroidered one would be a bit more expensive. So printing is another way that I feel like you could kind of like insinuate the agbada, the embroidery print, yeah.
Okay, and the second question, how do you recycle these clothes to make new designs, is her question.
For me?
I wonder, maybe that one's directed to Bianca.
Well, my clothes are made out of recycled convey quilts, but I am looking at other ways. I'm exploring other ways of using recycled materials in my work. So one project that I'm working on is like doing knitting using strips of old saris, and other ways of using recycled fabrics.
Wonderful. One question that comes to my mind, since Ola and a couple of our other scholarship recipients are pursuing fashion, do you have any advice that you would give to newcomers to the field, people who are coming up and in school or close to finishing school?
Am I going first, or do you want to go, Bianca? I think I would say that if I say fashion is easy, I will be lying. You really have to love it, you know, in order to have the longevity in this business, because it's not just about the creation. At least from our field, it goes into every fiber of who you are as a person. And I think that you have to, first of all, have a message. You know, you have to be authentic to who you are. You have to have a message that you're trying to give, and you have to have a purpose of what you want to give to people, you know. So that would be my advice, will be to do your homework in that regards. Yeah. I don't know what Bianca would say to that.
Can you repeat the question again?
I was just asking, what sort of advice would you have to young people who are new to the field of fashion, who are thinking about similar questions like that sort of ethical concerns and sustainability? What kind of advice maybe would you offer?
That's really difficult, because I had those concerns right from the beginning, and then I just went headlong into the luxury fashion industry, and I learned a lot, and I'm really grateful for that time, because I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do and what I didn't like. But for someone who wants to step outside of that system, I would probably say the regular rules apply, which is just work really, really hard. And, you know, there's a lot of brands that people can do internships for, and a lot of interesting sustainable projects. And I'm sure there's a lot of like small brands who need interns, but the reason that my career worked out the way it did for me is because all through my undergrad and every minute I got, I was just doing internships and learning and working really hard. So I think that's probably the secret for success, whatever direction you take.
Can I add one more thing? I think especially because people still need to be educated when it comes to sustainable fashion. So I would say patience is a big thing. You have to be very patient. If you're expecting to have overnight success, that is impossible. So patience comes with it, and educating people it's part of the thing that I think would elevate sustainable fashion in a couple of years to come.
Wonderful. Thank you both. We are right at time. That's been an hour. So I think that was a beautiful conclusion. And I just want to thank you both so much for joining us today. This is the last program of our public part of today's annual meeting. So thank you, Lola, and thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.
Thank you.